Everybody thought that the big news this week from Disney was going to be Ahsoka, but it turns out that a soaking is coming for Disneyland. No, it has nothing to do with Star Wars. It has something to do with the real world, and the implications are significant. Hurricane Hilary is mad and angry, and SoCal is going to be taking the brunt of this. This is such a big deal that it may actually impact the writer's strike and the timeline coming forth from that. It's such a big deal, folks, that, it changed the programming for today. And so we're covering it today. We'll tell you why this is such a rarity and what you can expect with Disneyland, not Disney World, closing for a hurricane. All right, folks, welcome back to another wonderful day here on the WDW Pro channel. No, we are not covering a wonderful topic, but it is wonderful because all of you are joining us. Folks, if you like content like this, consider clicking the like button, share, subscribe, and when you click it, you stick it to the algorithms. It's the notification bell. Joining me to talk about this breaking news, which does have an impact on the public good, and therefore we'll be discussing this with all due deference and accuracy, we hope. Vash Sky is back. Vash, welcome to the channel once again.
And I am happy to be back. I will say I haven't made a public appearance in social media for quite a while. That's because there are some family issues that I am currently working out. But because of the severity of this particular story, well, when Pro asks you to come on, you got to come on and at least elaborate to the viewers out there what's actually been going on. This is a big news story here.
Absolutely. And folks, we think this is unprecedented. Of course, Vash we consider to be of the absolute highest caliber when it comes to his historic understanding of the West Coast parks. And, well, this is directly in his wheelhouse, so let's get at it. All right, ladies and gentlemen, we will be beginning today with an article out of the Orange County Register. This one about Disneyland, of course, but far more. Disneyland, Universal, and other Southern California theme parks prepare for Hurricane Hilary. And at the time of this video, ladies and gentlemen, well, we're there. Things are beginning to shut down. Knott's, Magic Mountain, SeaWorld, and Legoland are all preparing for potential impacts of the major Category 4 storm. Now, folks, if you'll look on your latest weather applications, you're going to see that this is not a Cat 4 at this time. This will be arriving and having impact later in the day as well as into the days ahead. But let's talk about it. And remember that this article came out yesterday. Southern California theme parks are busy making storm watch preparations usually reserved for their Florida counterparts as Hurricane Hilary heads north, packing 145-mile-per-hour winds and bearing down on a region not accustomed to severe tropical weather. Now, let's also say here that at the time that this arrives in the area of the parks, we believe that this will be a tropical storm, that these winds will not be likely at 100 miles per hour, although perhaps a gust can reach that level. This is going to be a storm that's all about rain and precipitation. And if you're from Florida or you're from the East Coast, the numbers we're going to discuss may seem a little trivial, but they are not for the West Coast. Let's read a little bit more, and then we'll dive in. Disneyland, Universal Studios Hollywood, Knott's Berry Farm, Six Flags, Magic Mountain, SeaWorld San Diego, and Legoland, California are monitoring Hilary's approach and preparing for potential impacts on Sunday, that's today, and Monday, when the storm is expected to bring flooding, downed trees, and power outages. Now, the big deal here, Vash, is that we are expecting this storm to bring something like 3 to 6 inches of rain down upon Southern California. And if we take a look right here, Vash, you will see that this red area here is the area that the eye of the storm could come through. And if we zoom in here, you're going to see that actually we could see this coming through all the way up through Irvine and getting darn close to Anaheim, perhaps Absolutely. Even having the eye come within miles of Disneyland itself. Now, that's also not the end of this, folks, because as you all know, it's on the outsides of these eyes, but in close proximity where you get much of this rain. Las Vegas is actually going to be on the wet side of this storm. Las Vegas could see a tremendous amount of rain. And if you're in Florida, Vash, you may be kind of snickering to yourself because 3 to 6 inches of rain can happen in a day. And sure. Yes, that's a heavy rain day, but the state can handle it. And most places in the East Coast can handle that. You may have some flash flooding. But for Southern California and the American Southwest, this is just insane levels of precipitation. So, Vash, walk us through what this means for your part of the country and how the Los Angeles metro area, as well as the entertainment venues, might handle this kind of water this quickly.
Well, some of these articles even go beyond that, even just beyond the 3 to 6 inches. You're talking about precipitation that might be as high as 10 inches in some places, which would be, I believe Axios said, about 200% of an annual precipitation that these areas might receive. So you're talking about a tremendous amount of water in a very short period of time, and that, unfortunately, has been an Achilles heel for Disneyland in the past. Even as recently as this year, Disneyland took the brunt of many, many storms from the months of January all the way up to, June. They were still having gloomy days and wet weather out there. So much so that it actually delayed the openings of Toontown, famously, for example, right? That the reimagining of that land. But you're talking about a tremendous amount of water. Now, in Florida, they have... because it's something that they have to deal with every day, they have a myriad of systems by which they can actually handle that degree of precipitation. But when you're talking about a place like Disneyland, it's just not built to handle that much rain. In fact, Disneyland had to have a huge refurbishment project that they had to undergo to rehab the roofs of some of their aging structures, like those out in Fantasyland particularly, but even as new as Little Mermaid over there in DCA. They had to close those attractions down for a period of time. Some of them still have scaffolding up in order to rehab those roofs because they had taken on so much rain for those months. Well, you're talking about that amount of rain in a couple of hours. This is going to be a tremendous storm that Disneyland is going to incur here. And honestly, it's as far as Disneyland is concerned, this is the first time I've ever seen something like this. Now, there have been other incidents, but precipitation this high, this short, never seen it.
Vash, walk us through some of the other times that Disneyland has closed for inclement weather of some sort. We'll include wildfires, of course, in that category, I suppose.
Well, and wildfires you should include. Now I'm going to go ahead and share with you my screen here, which I pulled up a Google image result for Disneyland wildfires, and I think the most famous wildfire that impacted Disneyland Resort operations was back in October of 2017. And you can see some of those images here reflect that.
Yes, when California looked like a hellscape.
A hellscape, for sure. And you can see how the smoke completely blocked out the sun, and it was not such a great day that day to be in the parks, for sure. And I believe that their operations were impacted as a result of that day. They've had other closures. Most famously, Walt Disney World has had many closures as it relates to weather or hurricane.
It's almost routine
winds
at Disney World in Orlando.
Right. Hurricane Charlie, I believe. Was it within the last couple of years, they've had a couple of hurricanes that have, obviously have diminished operations. I believe it was for Hurricane Irma, if I'm not mistaken. Is that right?
Hurricane Irma is the one that caused some minor flooding in the Contemporary, I believe. So, yes.
Oh, yes, and that's something that they're still dealing with out there. I just recently went to the Contemporary, and I thought, that roof's a little water damaged. I wonder what that's going on there. Well,
little leaky.
little leaky for sure. But, I mean, in terms of Disneyland's history, one of the reasons why Disneyland was even chosen to begin with by the Stanford Research Institute back in the early 1950s was because it was free of all of these kind of inclement weather cycles that could possibly disrupt the operations of a potential Disneyland or the Disneyland Resort as we know it today. And so, as far as unplanned closures are concerned, or even early closings, as we'll see here with this Hurricane Hilary. They closed once for just after the assassination of John F. Kennedy back in 1963. They didn't even close for Walt's death in 1966, interestingly enough. From there, you close one other time for the Yippie invasion in the 70s. But even then, they opened that day.
That might be a video down the road someday.
Yeah, August 6, 1970. A very interesting story for sure. But then you have to go into September 11th until that date and time when they had to close. And then most famously, the 412 days they were closed for this recent pandemic.
Absolutely. Vash, of the parks that are over there in this area, we're talking about Disneyland, of course, but also let's bring into this Universal Studios Hollywood. Let's talk about Knott's Berry Farm and others. Which parks do you think can weather this the best, and which ones do you think might be in real trouble? And let me go ahead and preface this too and say, at the highest of my concern in terms of entertainment venues in this region, it's not California. I'm really a little bit worried about Las Vegas. And, this probably doesn't come into many people's minds, but I'm also looking at the national parks in the region, because this kind of water can actually damage the desert sands, the desert soil, the desert terrain. This can actually do some serious damage to very old rockwork and the wildlife that lives there. The animals are not made for this.
No, and we are hearing that a particular concern is actually Palm Springs, which we know is a historic site in terms of Disney history, but also Hollywood history and otherwise. There are some, priceless structures and architectural features out there that could be impacted very well by this storm, and that is particularly concerning. Now, Las Vegas... Yeah, that is a concern for sure.
It can't handle water. It rains 2 inches and the roads are flooded completely.
Right. I know they have been working on a state-of-the-art kind of flooding system out there in order to take on more water. This was some number of years ago. But again, I mean, this is going to be a lot of water at one time, which is the major concern out there. I am hopeful because of how far inland it is. The precipitation that might downpour in that area.
Everybody cross your fingers. We don't want to see communities suffer needlessly, and so this is one of those situations. But Vash, my thought on this, of course, is that perhaps Universal Studios Hollywood has the best shot of avoiding some of these flooding issues just because of the terrain. But
then you have to worry about mudslides as well. So
that's a great point. Oh, that escalator does not need a mudslide.
No, it does not. That's the one thing that concerns me about Universal Studios
I hadn't thought
Hollywood.
about that.
You have some attractions like Forbidden Journey, for example, Harry Potter and Forbidden Journey, that's built on stilts out over mountaintops and cliffs and so forth. That is particularly concerning. And again, a lot of those structures, well, they've been there for decades, and because of this, the city planning and structure out there, which was actually a good forebearer for what actually occurred in Walt Disney World with the RCID, but that's a whole nother story. Universal, they haven't necessarily updated their structures in some time, so that is a particular concern of mine.
So let's talk about something though, Vash, that is easy for people to conflate. So when we talk about hurricanes on the East Coast, what we're often talking about there, because the states can often handle the flooding. Now, we know there are exceptions, right? Katrina being perhaps the most glaring of these, where flooding did cause a huge issue, and Valiant Renegade has some great stories about that. Great as in he's got some miraculous stories even about it. But Vash, when we're talking about the West Coast and this Hurricane Hilary, it's not the winds that we see out of the East Coast hurricanes that are perhaps so troubling. It's the flooding that you've been talking about. But let's talk about the winds, because let's say that later today, Southern California begins to experience 80 mile an hour, 90 mile an hour winds.
Yeah.
I'm not so sure that the structures and the buildings are even made for that, because this is so unprecedented. How do you think that structurally things are going to handle these kinds of winds? Do you think this actually is something that'll be well mitigated by these areas?
See, that's of a particular concern. As we know it, right now you have over 100 mile per hour winds associated with Hurricane Hilary at this point. So we had to assume that when it actually hits landfall, that those type hurricane force winds that you talk about, 80 to 90 per hour winds, might actually.
Right. We hope not. We hope that sustained winds in that level do not happen, because if so, we can anticipate that there will be record-breaking kinds of insurance claims in terms of roof damage, etc. We would not want that whatsoever.
No, and like you said, the East Coast, Walt Disney World, for example, all of its tallest structures, let's say, it's all of its iconic structures that we know from that region, have all been made to bear the brunt of hurricane.
And Vash, as you know, they can take Cinderella's castle apart, of course, and truck it to a more safe location, of course. Right. I read that once. It's not true, folks. That's a funny story, but it's not true.
I'm sure there are pieces that could be replaced, but the bulk of it, though, you're not moving. You're looking at a structure that's there for the long haul. But I will say, I think one of the things that might help out Disneyland is two things. One is you do have the Santa Ana winds that these structures have to be obviously built for. Now, that's nothing compared to hurricane type winds, obviously. But then on top of that, you have things are built to withstand earthquakes, and so I think combined with both of those, you could mitigate some damages. But again, 80, 90 mile an hour winds. Looking in the history books, I've never seen something like this take place in this region, and we have to assume that it's going to be impacted greatly. If in fact these things actually bear out as they're projected to.
Absolutely, one of the most populated areas in North America, right up there with New York. And folks, we hope for the very best. We never hope for calamity. That is the farthest thing from our minds in terms of this. If you're a listener today and you are in the Southern California area, we recommend highly and deeply, because we care about you, take cover, take shelter, be in a safe place. Follow the guidance of the authorities, so long as they're giving you wise and safely advice. And I think it's an apolitical statement to say to the federal government, dear feds, we need you to perform better than with Maui this time, okay? But we need you to perform better than you've been performing in Hawaii. Please, please, please. Let's do a better job. And if assistance is needed in mass when it comes to Los Angeles, let's make that happen.
Thankfully,
Vash,
assistance. I was just one note here. Thankfully, they do have procedures for some of these things, as most famously with the North Ridge earthquake that took place in 1994. Obviously, there has been a building up of some of that infrastructure to get help to where it needs to be, and to handle some of these things. But I do echo your sentiments, bro. We need a lot better preparedness and help and resources when appropriate here.
Absolutely. All right, Vash, it's been a great pleasure to have you on the channel. Hopefully the next time it's under more positive circumstances, but folks, keep tuning in to this channel. We will cover this as it breaks. We don't know what's going to happen. This is not on our typical radar in terms of programming, but as this continues, we will be here to bring you the latest news when it comes to all of the theme parks, all of the entertainment venues out there in Southern California and beyond. And folks, we also are hearing that despite the fact that there are positive, very positive steps perhaps with the writer and actor strike in Hollywood, we now suspect that those positive steps will be delayed due to this hurricane. So there are all kinds of implications happening, and we will make way out of our busy schedule if we can be of any assistance out there to cover this and cover it accurately. Folks, the number one priority, of course, is be safe. And for all of the rest of us out there who are not living in the Southern California area, let's give them our thoughts, our prayers, and our assistance and kindness should they be in such need. Vash, thank you again, sir. It's a great honor to have you on each and every time. Folks, drop a comment down below. Let us know what you think. We cover your comments. In those comments, be kind, of course. And if you like content like this, consider clicking the like button, share, subscribe. And when you click it, you stick it to the algorithms. It's the notification bell. Don't forget that we have a special live stream happening this Tuesday. We don't normally do that on Tuesdays, but a special edition of the Pro Show is coming because we are celebrating the amazing milestones of so many of our friends. Culture Casino has hit 10,000 subscribers, Force of Light at 20,000, and others. Lorena Creole is doing fantastic. And we're going to be announcing more news about That Park Place now becoming a YouTube channel and forming a incredible network of That Park Place channels, all combining into the best way to receive entertainment news, everything that should be fun, right here. Well, folks, wherever you are and whatever you're doing, keep learning, keep growing, and keep having fun.
Floral, it's time for you to walk the plank.
What? Why?
Cuz you haven't subscribed to WDW Pro yet. Nor bookmark thatparkplace.com on your web browser to get great articles from great contributors.
What?